right, so today is Be Set Apart Part 2. Be Set Apart Part 2. Okay, so let me just do a quick reset on what we're doing here. Leviticus 19 and verse 2, it talks about, it says, speak to the children, to all the congregation of the children of Israel, and say to them, be set apart, for I, Yahweh, your Elohim, is set apart. By the way, that doesn't sound like an option. That has a very strong affirmative sort of be. It's a command, okay? So be set apart. Why? Because I am set apart. And so the connection needs to be because we want to become him. You can't become me if you don't understand that I'm set apart, so you need to be set apart. And so then we defined set apart, which is kodesh or kadosh, right? Kodesh. It means consecrated, declared sacred, dedicated or set apart for the service of worship of Yahweh. So you can have set apart items that are dedicated and consecrated for the service of Yahweh. You can have dedicated people or kadosh people, or holy people, set apart people. So to be set apart or to set apart is to separate something for a special purpose and to distinguish it as different in a way that is open and discernible. So to be set apart in general, not set apart as holy, but just the idea of setting apart is to take something and make it for a special purpose, and that it should be obvious and distinguishable that it is different from other things. So like you have the showbread. That was supposed to be obvious and different than the regular bread. You have the menorah in the tabernacle. It was set apart. You have people that should be discernibly different, who are the set apart people. You got a set apart day called the Sabbath. It's different than other days. It should be discernibly different. And so this is what I want us to really get, is that we are to be set apart. He says, be set apart, for I am set apart. And that's not the only place he said it. That's in lots of places. That's the first place he actually said that. Okay, we talked about last time the law of first mention, which is that you learn an awful lot about something the first place it's mentioned. That's not the first place the word setting apart is used, but this is the idea of being set apart, where the instruction or the command for people to be set apart. Because he sets apart light and dark and does things in Genesis. He does some separating of things. So the idea of separating. But here, we're talking about you being separate. You being somehow set apart. So why do we want to do this? So last time we talked a little bit about kind of setting the foundation for this. So now I need to motivate you. Because we don't do anything without a reason. We have to want it, right? We have to have a reason to do it. So why should you want to be set apart? So we're going to start, it says that he knows the end from the beginning, or you can always last will be first. Well, let's go to literally the last verse in your Bible. We're going to actually go to Revelation. Oh, Rabbi's going to Revelation. I'm going to use two references in Revelation. Okay, Revelation 22 and verse 21. At the end of all of what we read in our scripture, it finishes with this statement: the favor of our Master Yeshua Messiah be with the set apart ones. So it says be with, but it has the idea of accompanying. In other words, if you're set apart, it comes with you. Not like it's not like a prayer here at the end where he's saying, I pray that, the favor be with you set apart. No, he's saying favor is with you, you set apart ones, if you're set apart. So why do you want to be set apart? Because it brings the favor of our Master Yeshua. That's a pretty good motivator. I think that should be something that can kind of get you going a little bit, because it brings his favor. We're not talking about grace the way you may have thought about it. And I know in some translations it uses the word grace there. Go listen to the teaching I did called The Search for the Doctrine of Grace. We're not talking about things that are unmerited here. He's saying those who are set apart merit his favor. And it will be with you when you are set apart. That doesn't mean you'll feel like that every minute of the day. He's still going to use trials and tribulations, as Elder Billy talked about during the prayer time, to get your forward motion, keep going and fix what needs to be fixed. But you're still going to be in favor, and those things will not destroy you. That's favor, by the way. That you live through them and you get through them. So the favor of our Master Yeshua is with, now it says be with, but that word be is not actually in the Greek. It just says the favor of Master Yeshua, Messiah, with the set-apart ones. So there's an implied is with, be with, something like that. And I think the context is an is with the set-apart ones. Wow. That's awesome. That's just incredible. The favor of our Messiah is with you when you're set apart. Okay? Now, let's go to Revelation 20. We'll go back 2 chapters. In verse 6. Blessed and set apart is the one having part in the first resurrection. Don't you want to be in the first resurrection? Isn't that the whole point? Does anybody want to be in the second resurrection? Or third or whatever? I would think we all want to be in the first resurrection. And he's saying, blessed and set apart is the one having part in the first resurrection. The second death has no authority, possesses no authority over these. I want that. I know you want that. But they shall be priests of Elohim and of Messiah and shall reign with him 1,000 years. So this is before the millennium. The first resurrection happens right at the beginning. And blessed are those who are in the first resurrection. Blessed and Kodesh, set apart, are those in the first resurrection. You motivated yet? Let's go to Deuteronomy 23. So we're going to jump all the way now to the other side of the book. And in verse 14. Now, this is an interesting choice, you may think, for me to do, because he's talking about, getting a sharp instrument to clean up your excrement. That's the context here, right? He says, in verse 11, and it shall be when evening comes and he bathes with water, and when the sun sets, let him come into the midst of the camp, and you shall have a place outside the camp where you shall go out, and you shall have a sharp implement among your equipment, and when you sit down outside, to your thing, you shall dig with it, and then turn and cover your excrement. Now this is why I brought these verses in. Because Yahweh, your Elohim, walks in the midst of your camp. If this is a camp, he walks in the midst. I'm not claiming I'm just saying, if this is a camp, then he walks in the midst. If your house is a camp, then he walks in the midst. And he says, he walks in the midst to deliver you and give your enemies over to you. Therefore, your camp is to be set apart. Not just you, but all of you in the camp collectively need to know that you need to be set apart because Yahweh is walking amongst you. And that's a different sort of motivation. The other things are motivations because it's what you wanted. This is one because it's scary. You need to have respect and realize Yahweh's walking among you. You don't need your stuff, and I'm talking about unclean, your excrement everywhere, where he can just walk among you. Why would you leave that everywhere? A lot of you do a pretty good job if you know somebody's coming over to quickly clean up your house because people are coming. Well, you don't know when Yahweh's coming. Yahweh's always coming. He's always around. He comes, he goes, he's here, he's always there. You know what I'm saying? So he's always around, so that means your camp has to stay clean all the time. But the camp is to be set apart as a whole. So hopefully that motivates you a little bit. And then I want to give us one little other tidbit before we switch to the next part of this, which is Exodus 30. Exodus 30 and verse 13. And again, you may think these are interesting choices of verses, but they make the point. Exodus 30 and verse 13. Everyone among those who are registered is to give this. Half a shekel according to the shekel of the set apart place. 20 gerahs being a shekel, the half shekel is the contribution to Yahweh. This isn't about the contribution. It's about this. That which is set apart is used as a measuring stick. So when you're looking at shekels, you look at the set apart shekel. to measure what a proper shekel is. So how do we measure ourselves? There's only one way to measure ourselves. That's Yeshua. Things that are set apart are the measuring stick for other things that are of like kind to be set apart like. So here we're talking about a shekel needs to be exactly like the shekel in the set apart place, the set apart shekel. Right? It says the shekel of the set apart place. Because that's the standard that we measure against. So when I saw that, I was thinking, that seems an odd verse, but for some reason, Yahweh was kind of pushing me to use that verse, and I realized it's because he's trying to say the set apart things are measuring sticks for those that want to be set apart. So when you give this offering that's supposed to be an exact amount in shekels, it needs to be measured against the shekel that's already been approved and set apart. Now, I'm not talking to you at all about shekels. I'm saying it's the point of the measuring stick. This is why we've always known, and didn't maybe know why, we need to transform and conform into the image of Yeshua, why we compare ourselves to see how much Yeshua-like we've become, because he is the shekel of the set-apart place when it comes to human beings. He is that standard, right? That's what that shekel of the set-apart place was, the standard which the other ones are measured against. So if you're going to be set apart, it should give you a lot of awe and respect for the idea that others will be measured against you someday. When you are also then a set apart in that first resurrection and you get changed, you're now going to have the responsibility of being the set apart shekel for some group of people. So I think that's a really, really cool analogy there, okay? Is this making sense so far? We're good? All right, so we're motivated. We understand a little bit about now what set apart is all about. So what needs to be set apart? Well, we're going to look at now a section that I call set apart behavior, and the fact that in these verses it also mentions very clearly that you are to set yourself apart. Okay? Remember, I'm trying to swim upstream with some of you, and I'm just trying to kick down for others that old Christian mindset that things were done for you that you need to do. Nothing was done for you that you need to do. Only things you could never do and that were never your job to do. And so when we read these verses, I want you to hear the wording of, and you shall set yourself apart. So these are your choices, your decisions to do or not do that are going to set you apart. Remember, I did that teaching, making decisions the reason you exist. So let's begin in 1 Peter. I'm going to read a big bunch here in 1 Peter chapter 1. Okay? 1 Peter chapter 1. And we'll begin in verse 13. I'll give you a second to get there. 1 Peter chapter 1. And in verse 13, therefore, having girded up the loins of your mind. Now, you did start with therefore, so you probably want to go back at some point and read the other 12 verses. Okay, so you know what the therefore came from. Maybe we'll just do that real quick. We're just going to read through it. So you know what the therefore has to do with. Kepha, an emissary of Yeshua, Messiah, to the chosen, the strangers of dispersion in Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. So this is Kepha writing to who? Those in the dispersion. That's important to know. He says, chosen according to the foreknowledge of Elohim, the Father, set apart to the Spirit unto obedience, by the Spirit unto obedience, and sprinkling of the blood of Messiah Yeshua, favor and peace be increased to you. Blessed be the Elohim and Father of our Master Yeshua Messiah, who according to his great compassion has caused us to be born again to a living expectation through the resurrection of Yeshua Messiah from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled and unfading, having been kept in the heavens for you, who are protected by the power of Elohim through belief for a deliverance ready to be revealed in the last time. Let me stop there. I don't think I saw that before to really mention. Some of you really get frustrated and concerned that you're either doing something wrong or something is failing in the system because you don't feel like he's protecting you because a lot of stuff's happening. Look at what it says here. You are protected by the power of Elohim through belief for deliverance when? In the last time. He's protecting you for when you're needing it in the last time. Not saying he's going to protect you from every nonsense that you run into in your life every day. Now, he does promise that no trial is going to come upon you that you can't handle, even if you don't realize you can. But he does say here that he's protecting you for a time, for a deliverance ready to be revealed, in which you exult, even though for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by manifold trials, see? In order that the proving of your belief, much more precious than gold, that perishes and is proven by fire, might be found to result in praise and respect and esteem at the revelation of Yeshua Messiah. So your belief needs to be proved by trials, which is fire, which is why I have the teaching called baptism of fire, which explains all that. Also, I think endure and receive the crown will cover that quite a bit. Now, so he says, whom having not seen you love, in whom you exult with unspeakable and esteemed joy, yet not seeing but believing, obtaining the goal of your belief, a deliverance of your life. Okay? Concerning this deliverance, the prophets have sought out and searched out, prophesying concerning the favor for you, searching to know what sort of time the Spirit which was in them was pointing out concerning Messiah. What Spirit was in them? That was before Messiah died. What Spirit? They had the Ruach. He said, when it was bearing witness beforehand the sufferings of Messiah and the esteems that would follow, to whom it was revealed that they were serving not themselves but you in these matters, which now have been announced to you through those who brought the good news to you by the set-apart Spirit sent from heaven, into which messengers long to look into. Wow, he just said an awful lot of powerful things. We're not going to delve into the depth of it, but you understand what he's talking about. He goes, therefore, because of all this amazing, incredible stuff that you've been drawn into and allowed to have a part in, therefore, he says, having girded up the loins of your mind. Because of all of this, you should have girded up the loins of your mind. Being sober, set your expectations perfectly upon the favor that is to be brought to you and the revelation of Yeshua Messiah. So follow this now. And we're going to get to the set apart verse here in a little bit. But he says, you, therefore, having girded up the loins of your mind. What does girded up the loins of your mind mean? I've taught this before. What does girding mean? It means tying something around to hold everything in, right? To cover and hold everything in. So your mind needs to be covered and it needs to, be protected and stuff to be held in and kept stuff out so that you can be sober-minded. And he says, set your expectation perfectly upon the favor that is to be brought. Perfectly on the unmerited favor to be brought or the favor to be brought? The merited favor to be brought. He just talked about all kinds of things that would merit favor. As obedient children, verse 14, not conforming yourselves to the former lusts in your ignorance. Okay, I know people get upset with me and they get all frustrated if I say this or that about some other ministry or some other thing. If you are going someplace and it's a mixed mess of your former behaviors, your former ways, your former life, then you're breaking what he's saying here. Aren't you? He said, not conforming yourselves to the former lusts in your ignorance. In other words, in your ignorance, you don't realize you're still doing the things that you were doing before, but now you think you're okay. It's not talking about the former lusts that you know were obvious and you just got them out of your life. You always knew they were bad. How many of you got rid of some things in your life you already knew were bad before you got rid of them? Nobody had to tell you they were wrong. You knew, but you just didn't seem to be able to kick the habit, so to speak. You just kept doing them anyway, but you still knew they were wrong. He's talking about stuff here that you're doing in ignorance. You had no idea they were wrong, but you're still doing them. He says, instead, listen now, instead, as the one who called you is set apart, so you also should become set apart in all behavior. What you do matters. I know you don't hear that on Sunday. What you do matters. As a matter of fact, as far as you're concerned, it's everything. It will make all the difference. What Yeshua did will not help you at all if you don't do. I know it's hard to hear sometimes, especially for brand new people. Oh no, Messiah, no, he did what he did. And it will value you every bit that it's supposed to if you do something. Specific set apart things. If you set yourself apart, it'll be of value to you. If you don't, it won't. You'll have made, whatever he did null and void. It won't help you at all. As far as you're concerned, it won't null and void for everybody else, but for you, it won't be anything. He says, as obedient children, you're going to do this. Obedience is the key. What is the covenant? If you obey my voice. The covenant is obedience. Oh no, it's a covenant of belief. Well, you're not going to obey if you don't believe. It's the whole point. And he makes that point, Peter does, throughout the previous 12 verses, 13 verses, that because of our belief in these things that happen, he says, that's what we understand. He says, but don't conform to your former lust. In other words, don't go back to your former desires and behaviors. I know it says the word lust and that messes people up because none of you thinks you lust anyway. Oh, I like this and I want that, but you don't think of it as lust. When you crave something and desire something that you should not have, that's a lust. Because I know that it was hard for me in the beginning when I saw the word lust. I just kind of read over those verses because I didn't have sexual perverse lusts. And I always thought lust was a sexual thing. Okay? You're lusting after her, you're lusting after him. I always thought it was a sexual thing. Then I came to realize it's the desiring of anything that you shouldn't have. It's a craving or desire. And that could be food, that could be money, that could be lots of things. That could be pleasing other people. Your desire to please people is why you will break more commands than almost any other thing. Almost all the Torah breaking questions I get, and when I say Torah breaking, I mean people trying to get permission to break, is because they want to please somebody or they're afraid they're not going to please somebody. Well, my mother will be mad and my brother will be mad, whoever, because you don't go to the wedding or the funeral or whatever, you don't go to the graduation. You don't come to Christmas dinner, you don't come to something. They're all going to get mad at you and you want to please them. That's a former lust. This need or desire or craving to please them, not disappoint them. Or maybe it's really a problem just with you where I just want everybody to love me and it would kill me for people to look at me that way. I think there was I think one of the shorts that we just put out there had to do with stop caring so much. I just watched that the other day. Stop caring so much about the wrong things is what I said in that one. Go look that up on our YouTube channel. You care way too much about the wrong things and not enough about the right things. So he says, you need to become. See, some people think, oh no, I made an altar call, I'm set apart. No. This is written to the chosen strangers in the dispersion. Ones who are already aware of all this stuff. He's talking to them not as brand new babes who don't know anything. Can we agree? He's definitely not talking to them like they have no idea who Messiah is or Torah is or any of that stuff. He's telling them that they're in a process of becoming set apart. It's a journey. Every time you find something that's not set apart in your life and you remove it, you're becoming more set apart. Every time you let something get added back into your life that didn't belong, you become less set apart. Here he's talking about be careful. There's a trap, there's a slippery slope where you can, or I should say a susceptibility, where you can end up doing what you used to do. Because now you found somebody out there that does it and says it's okay. All the churches that do their fall festivals are giving you an excuse and a way to say it's okay to do Halloween. Well, no, it's not okay. And putting some spin on it doesn't make it okay, just like Christmas doesn't make the Saturnalia okay. Calling it Messiah's birth doesn't make it okay. But this is what the systems out there have been doing for centuries and centuries and centuries. And so we need to be aware of that and not fall into that trap. Because he's telling us, we, as our goal, he says, as the one who called you. Who called you? The Father drew you to Messiah. As the one who called you is set apart, he says, you should also become set apart. How? In your behavior. So tell that to every Christian and then ask them, well, how would you do that? How do you know how to be set apart in behavior? What does that look like? Well, I just need to help old ladies across the street and go visit orphanages. And look, those are nice things to do. He's talking about covenant and Torah observance. Can we all agree on that? But your friends aren't going to see that. They're not going to understand that. What does it mean to be set apart in all behavior? I go to church every week. Well, he commands you to keep Shabbat, not to go to church every week. And that Shabbat has a set-apart gathering. It's not on Sunday. So we need to take this very seriously. He says, verse 17, and if you call on the Father, who without partiality judges according to each one's work, pass the time of your sojourning in fear. Don't forget that the Father's going to judge your behavior. We'll call that your works. The things that you do are the fruit of your belief and your thoughts. So he's going to judge your works. He says, so please be encouraged to pass the time of your sojourning in awe and respect and reverence for the Father. Go listen to the fear of Yahweh teaching so you understand what fear is scripturally. Knowing. This is why you're doing all this. Because you're supposed to know that you were redeemed from your former futile way of life. Wow. He's telling you when you did the things you used to do, they were futile. What does futile mean? It means you're putting in all this effort and you're never going to get what you were trying to get. You're wasting time. You're never going to get the result doing what you're doing that you wanted to get. What you're doing will never bring the result that you wanted to get. It's futile, okay? It's like if I want to try to, I want to cut my steak with a strand of cooked spaghetti. I could try to cut it all day long. It's not going anywhere. It's just not going to work. Some of you have done lots of things in your life. You had the wrong tool or the wrong thing, and it was futile. It didn't matter how long you were going to work at it. You didn't have the right stuff, and so it was never going to work. You needed to do something different. So he's warning us. He's saying, look, be set apart yourselves, okay? Because the one who's set apart, so you shall be set apart in all behavior. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped verse 16. He says, because it's been written, be set apart, for I am set apart. It's connecting us back to Leviticus 19, where we started, which is also in other places, but that's what it's connecting us to. And he says that you need to do all these things knowing you were redeemed from all of that. You aren't redeemed. This is the lie that you're getting told all the time by the mainstream. You were redeemed out of the law. The law is your problem. You're under the law. You're away from the burden now. You're not under the law. You're burdening yourself again with that stuff. No, you were redeemed from the former stupidities and the things you did that you thought were law. You thought were right. You thought was the things that pleased the Creator. You weren't redeemed from the law. You were redeemed so you can keep it. You're redeemed out of your futile way because now you can do the law. By the way, the law, the Torah, brings life and all the results you're looking for. Everywhere in Scripture, consistently it says, doing that works. And Peter's just endorsing that, saying, you used to do things and they were futile. But the Christians will either say, no, doing the Torah was futile. It was not going to get you the results. But see, you can't say that when it talks about former. He's not talking to former Torah-observant Jews necessarily. Okay? If anything, he's talking to dispersed Israelites who are in the dispersion living like Gentiles, who now have been reawakened to their birthright and to covenant. And he's saying you were redeemed out of all of that junk so that now you can be in a clean, fresh, new creation, keeping the Torah in the full context of Messiah. Now, He says, knowing that you were redeemed from your futile way of life, inherited from your fathers, not with what is corruptible, silver or gold, but with the precious blood of Messiah, as of a lamb unblemished and spotless, foreknown indeed before the foundation of the world, but manifested in these last times for your sakes. So let's understand why he talked about the lamb. What they're trying to do is point out that the redeeming had to do with life and death. Because the blood of the lamb that was put on the doorposts protected them in a life and death situation. So the reference is to get you to think of what he did as not being about the law, and it's about life and death. So whatever else it's talking about is connected to bringing life or bringing death. Your old futile way brought death. This new way brings life. Only because Messiah redeemed you. It says here that this was foreknown indeed before the foundation of the world. So we know that Yeshua was slain before the foundation of the world. Not literally, but it was agreed to. It was going to happen. It was known to the Father and the Son that this was going to be. So that way, however that all works when you're outside of time, whatever he did affected everybody before and after he did it. In other words, it wasn't just from that moment forward, which there's a lot of teachings out there in Messianic and Christianity that, everybody before he did that didn't get what we all get now. We're special now because we happen to live after, randomly just happen to live after he died and was resurrected. It's not relevant. It's random, but it's not relevant. Everybody before and everybody after, that's why that foundation verse is in there, gets the same benefit by what Yeshua did. And so, he says, foreknown indeed before the foundation of the world, but manifested in these last times for your sakes, who through him believe in Elohim. Now notice that it didn't say who just believe in him, but through him are learning to believe in Elohim. People that were losing their belief in Elohim, they got disconnected, dispersed, they're out there. The forefathers have done all kinds of futile things. This is generationally disconnected by a long time, even in this day, from when the northern kingdom was taken away. All right? I'm talking about hundreds of years. And so, as you're looking at that, he then says in verse 21, who through him believe in Elohim, who raised him from the dead and gave him esteem, so that your belief and expectation are in Elohim. Now that you have cleansed your lives, remember he told you, be careful reading your scripture. Well, I should just stop right there. Be careful reading your scripture. Be careful reading things that sound in a time frame wise, like something is already completed or finished, and just read it without recognizing that it's in the middle of some other conversation. So we're told here, like in verse 13, having girded up the loins of your mind, so like it's already done. But then we're told it's in a journey, and that we're to go ahead and go forward and set ourselves apart. So don't get this arrived confused with it's a process. Certain things have happened that you're aware of and that you've already started, and because of that, you now know where to go and what to do. But don't start reading things as if they're conclusive, as in finished. Because therefore, having girded up sounds like it's done. But then later on he says, no, but because of that, you need to go forward and become set apart and be about going through the process of becoming set apart. Become is an unfinished process. He didn't say you were done already. He says, I'm glad you became set apart because your mind was girded. He says, because of all of this, become set apart. Do the actions that will make you set apart. And so now we get to here where it says, now that you have cleansed your lives. Yes, you have. In other words, you're no longer, hopefully, doing those futile things from before. In obeying the truth, so you cleanse your lives in obeying the truth. So I don't know how Christian pastors teach this whole idea of obeying the truth. How do you teach obeying the truth if you study the Bible from cover to cover and not know it's talking about the Torah? I mean, it can't be talking about anything else scripturally. That's not some odd interpretation on my part. There's no way to get to any other scriptural conclusion unless it's by purposeful deception, which was given to the churches. I'm not blaming people in there now saying they're the ones doing the purposeful deception. But Hasatan has put this purposeful deception in there. Because you can't read this in seminary And some people actually can't, because when they get there, they end up leaving seminary because they realize it doesn't say what they thought it said, or what they're teaching is not what it says. But you're set apart. You've cleansed your lives in obeying. So they were polluted in how they obeyed. Now they're cleansing how they're obeying. Not they just recognize that it's done away with, so I don't have to obey. But now I've taken the pollution, the falseness, and all the other junk that were hampering me in my obedience. So I've cleansed myself in my obeying through the truth, through the Spirit, to unfeigned brotherly love, love one another fervently with a clean heart. So listen, now that you've cleansed your lives in obeying the truth through the Spirit. So you're obeying the truth through the Spirit. Oh, see, it's this ooey-gooey thing. No. All right? It's not this ethereal thing, the Spirit. It's not from another realm. He says that you've cleansed your lives because you obeyed the truth through the Spirit. What's that mean? Because you were able to clean your life up because you recognized the fullness of what it was intended. If you only do the mechanics, you will not have cleansed your lives completely. You'll have missed a lot of spots. So he's saying that you're doing this through the Spirit of what was intended. Now you're getting your life clean. Oh, but I didn't sleep with her. But you wanted to. There's a lot of spots on you. You're not clean. Mechanically, you're clean, but not by the Spirit. Oh, I didn't kill anybody. Oh, but you wanted to. I didn't steal anything. Oh, but you wanted to. I didn't do this. Listen, the mechanics aren't enough. The mechanics aren't enough. You have to understand the fullness of Yahweh's intent. And you know what? Let's just take this in a much broader picture. I probably said it, but I don't remember saying it this way. The fullness of the intent of all of this is to make you into Yeshua. That's the fullness of the intent of the Torah. It's intended to transform you. I know I've said that the Torah is the vehicle that transforms you into Yeshua. But that's the fullness of the intention of giving us the law. It's the transformational process through our taking and doing and embracing it in the Spirit it was intended to make us Him, to change us into Him. I don't know how we don't really get that or understand that, but I mean, it's the process to do all that. All right, now, so that being said, let's continue in verse 23. He says, we'll go back to 22. Now that you've been cleansed your lives and obeying the truth, accepted through the Spirit, that he wants you to go to unfeigned brotherly love, love one another fervently with a clean heart, having been born again, not of corruptible seed, but incorruptible, through the living word of Elohim, which remains forever. Look, I know it's really popular to use the phrase, I'm born again, or somebody's born again, and everything else. So what is it talking about? Well, I'm a born again Christian. How can you be a born again Christian? There wasn't anything called a Christian before you were born. I don't know what you're talking about. You were a Christian, then you were born back into a Christian? It doesn't make any sense. But you're trying to say, I'm a born again like a status. What it's saying is that I have a new thought birthed in me, a new understanding birthed in me. I see the world differently now. It's like being born again, like I'm a whole different person from that point of view. Not this somehow, again, ethereal sort of idea of being born again, or looking at it as a status. People like to use the status as like, I'm saved, I'm born again. He's telling you, look, having had this new thought birthed in you through Messiah, who opened your bubble, he says, I want you to have this love for each other, to love one another fervently with a clean heart, because you have this new understanding. So now you can have a clean heart when you're doing these things. Because that idea was birthed in you from incorruptible seed, not corruptible seed. Incorruptible seed placed that thought in your head, birthed that understanding in your heart. Now, it's not going to stay alive very long, the seed, if it doesn't get watered and it's on good ground and all the other things. So don't fall into that again, Christianized idea that, hey, I got this seed now, birthed in me, this idea, this thought, I'm good to go. Well, only if you go. If you stand still or go backwards, no. It's a seed, right? It says it was born again, not of corruptible seed, but incorruptible seed. So seed, again, gives us the idea of the plant in the ground and having fertile ground and it being watered and tended and the weeds gotten away and everything else. He says, so he was birthed to you an incorruptible seed through the living word of Elohim, which remains forever. The living word is the living word of the written word, which is also forever. So you can't just do away with that and think that somehow this is all going to make sense and work for you. The living word is forever. The written word is the living word. Yeshua is the walking, talking, living Torah. Verse 24, because all flesh is as grass, as the esteem of man is the flower of the grass. All the esteem of man is as the flower of the grass. The grass withers and its flower falls away, but the word of Elohim. Now, again, is he talking just about Yeshua here, or is he talking about the Torah? He says the word of Elohim remains forever. All throughout Scripture, the Torah is called the word of Elohim. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet. The Torah is always talked to as the word. But so is Yeshua. They're the same thing. One helps you to become the other. Okay? He says now, this is interesting, and this is the word announced to you as good news to you. So now we know it's talking about information, and that information is about the Torah, and it's also about Yeshua. So the good news is this whole thing that was going on in chapter 1. It's not just, hey, the Messiah came and he died and was resurrected. All Christians think that's the good news. Now that is good news, and it's part of it. But the good news is what it means to you. What does it do for you? That's the good news. Well, they'll make up their own Christian version of what it does for you. What it does for you, it says, you in dispersion, it's time to come home. You out there, you can come and get reconnected, recovenanted. We can make a new covenant with you. When I say come home, it doesn't mean all dispersed are just going to show up in Israel. Okay, we're still going to be where we are for right now, because it says when Yeshua shows up, we're going to be gathered. But in the meantime, we're reconnecting and regathering where we are, because our connecting is vertical and horizontal as he brings people together. Now, he wants us to do this, though, with unfeigned brotherly love and to love one another fervently with a clean heart. But we're to love each other with a clean heart. So what's the clean heart? We got to cleanse ourselves of all of these wrong desires. And desires in our loving each other, we're not talking about the sexual stuff there either. We're talking about you may desire things, you're jealous, you're zealous, you're judging, you're critical, you're whatever, okay? The way you look at people and treat people, is it from a clean-hearted perspective? Or is it from some prejudiced perspective? And by prejudiced, I'm not even talking about the standard, what you think of like racially. I mean, we can be prejudiced from all kinds of things. Okay, culture, financial status, gender, age, looks, height, weight, anything. I mean, religious belief, the way we understand. So you could be coming at this with all kinds of prejudice. That's not a clean heart. You can't love your brother with a clean heart. Oh, but they used to do this. They used to be a lesbian. They used to be a prostitute. They used to be a homosexual. They used to be a drug dealer. They used to be in jail. They used to be... Where's your clean heart? Where's your clean heart? Okay, so we have these challenges because you were supposed to be reborn. So what would that mean if you were reborn? You'd have a new heart, a new mind, clean slate, fresh start. That's the metaphor here. It's not that you're actually a new and different person, but you should be thinking and feeling and acting in a different way. But you're still the same person, but you're you doing different things, making different choices. That's really the key. It's you making different choices. You making different decisions. That makes all the difference, okay? Now, let's go to, we could almost stop right there. Does that not really just kick you in the teeth and get your attention? All right? All right, Leviticus 11. So when I say Leviticus 11, how many of you immediately thought kashrut? All right, good for you. All right? Because you got to know, look, one of these days I am going to do this. So I've talked about it before. I may surprise you guys at a holy day or Sukkot or something. We are going to take the Messianic Israel citizenship exam. And there will be a question on there, I promise you. I'm giving you a precursor that asks you what chapter you find the kashrut laws in. What chapter do you find the feasts in? Okay? I'm going to ask you all kinds of things you should know. Okay? Look, if someone coming to this country should know certain things about our presidents and our sports and our different, whatever it is, they're supposed to know about our culture, you should know some basic things. All right? So you should know the 2 places that the Torah is given. Which books, which chapters. You should be able to name the 10 commandments in order. There's only 10 of them. I know you can name all 10. Well, I hope you can name all 10. But in order. Only 10. I didn't ask you to name the 613 in order. Okay, but the 10. All right, so you excited about that? You're petrified. Okay, so it's not an open book test either. Listen, you're laughing. I showed up as a guest speaker at a congregation, and I had them all close their Bibles, put them on a table, and I handed out pens and paper. They had no idea I was going to do this. And I gave them the exam. It was bad. No, it was eye-opening. It was eye-opening. I mean, some of you, I'm one of them, for example. Like when I was a young teenager, I could name every player on every team in football. You tell me the number and the team, I can tell you who it was. Of course, that's before free agency and people didn't move around a lot. People actually stayed on their team their whole careers. So it was easy when I was 12 to do that. But I still knew that many teams, and there was less teams, but I still knew like 28 teams, every player. And that was very useless, actually. I mean, what was that? Okay? I could entertain my friends and feel all impressed, but there was no value in it. But knowing this book and your people and your culture and your history has a huge amount of value. Can you name the 12 tribes? All 12 brothers? Well, let's see, there's Joseph and, maybe you remember the ones that are in the stories the most. What about the guys that never get talked about and don't do anything? It's not like they don't do anything, but it doesn't get written about. Do you know all those guys? What about the 12 apostles? You're going to be set apart. You don't even know anything about your heritage. You can't name the 12, either 12. Can you name all the holy days? Can you name the 7, high days? I mean, I don't know what part, this exam really helped. You should know your stuff. I'm not talking about stuff you shouldn't know. Can we agree that I haven't said one thing that you can agree? Shouldn't you know all these things? Yes. Are they reasonable? Yes. All right. Do you know all of these things? No. Okay, but they're reasonable. All right? They're reasonable. If I ask you where the fruit of the Spirit is taught, you should know what book that is. If I ask you where the armor of Elohim is, where's that? Ephesians what? 6, correct, okay? So, there are things you should know. The love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13. You got to know some things, all right? Where are the 144,000 listed? You guys love Revelation. Chapter 7, okay? So you got to know these things. All right, now, that was my sidetrack. All right, Leviticus 11. That's why, because I got to kashrut and it just triggered that thought in my head. All right, so Leviticus 11, which is obviously about kashrut. At the very end here in verse 44, it says, "For I, Yahweh your Elohim, I am Yahweh your Elohim, and you shall set yourselves apart." There's that verse I was telling you about. So you're going to set yourselves apart. This isn't the only place he says it. "And you shall be set apart, for I am set apart. You do not defile yourselves with." So he's making a connection that setting yourself apart means doing what he says and not doing what he says not to do, because if you do what he says not to do, you defile your set-apart status. So here he's talking specifically about kashrut and about eating things you shouldn't eat. He says, if you do that, you will defile yourself. But I'm just giving you a pattern here. This is going to be a pattern. If you do what he says not to do, that defiles your status as set apart. Set apart is a status. It's not a permanent one. Okay, there are no permanent statuses. Christianity lied to you. Okay, once saved, always saved, blah, blah, blah. Those things are not permanent statuses. Saved today, need to be saved later today. That's more of a status. And Yahweh's looking at you like, really? Didn't I just save you like 5 minutes ago? You again? Yeah, it's me again, you know. So let's understand that after the kashrut instructions, Yahweh connects the behavior of eating with being set apart. So eating does matter. He also connects that the reason he brought them out of Egypt was to be set apart. Listen to what it says in verse 45. For I am Yahweh your Elohim, I am Yahweh who is bringing you up from out of the land of Egypt to be your Elohim, and you shall be set apart. So he brought you out to bring you in. Okay, I pointed Billy for that. He brought you out of Egypt so that you would do something different. He didn't bring you out of Egypt to act like you're still in Egypt. In Egypt, they ate whatever they ate. I know they mentioned the leeks and all this other stuff, but you know, they weren't keeping kashrut. You know, you kind of picture this sort of Orthodox Jewish community slaves. It's not what it was. He had to teach them how to eat right in Leviticus 11. They did not have that understanding at that point. They had lost connection with what was appropriate and what wasn't. Now, because we know back to Noah, they knew what a clean animal was and what an unclean animal was. But somehow that information had gotten lost in the slavery. And so he's saying, look, I'll read it again from 44 to 45. For I am Yahweh your Elohim, and you shall, I like the way he starts off, I have the authority, I am what you're aiming at, I am the goal you have, I have set you, I am set apart, so you need to set yourself apart. Because you need to do it not just because I said so, because it's part of how you become me. You want to become me, you got to be set apart. All right? He says, and you shall be set apart, for I am set apart. And you do not defile yourselves with any creeping creature that creeps on the earth. For I am Yahweh, who is bringing you up out of the land of Mitzrayim, to be your Elohim, and you shall be set apart, for I am set apart. Then he goes, this is the Torah of the beast, etc., etc. So this is the Torah. This is the instructions from Yahweh. The teachings and instructions of Yahweh is what Torah is. The teachings and instructions of Yahweh. And so we need to remember that the kashrut laws are a part of that. Guess what? The feasts are. All these other, every piece of Torah is a part of not going back to the old ways, to the old systems of the world, being set apart. Father, I don't ask you to take them out of the world, but I want them not to be of the world anymore. I don't want, they're not to be of it. You're there, but you're not of. Meaning you're not participating, acting like, seeming like, looking like, being like. But you're in it. You're stuck here for right now. But you can look in a open and distinguishably, discernibly different way than everybody else. This is why the Orthodox, like the Chabad Orthodox, dress the way they do. You can pick them out anywhere, can't you? Because they want it to be clear to the people in their community that they are set apart. We don't look like anybody else. We don't dress like anybody else. So you can find us anywhere. And you'll know it's one of us. We don't look like the world. We don't act like the world. We don't dress like the world. Okay? I had something else to say, but I won't. All right. Let's go now to Exodus 22. Exodus 22, and we'll look at verse 31. Last verse. And you are set apart men to me, and you do not eat any meat which is torn to pieces in the field, you throw it to the dogs. And you're thinking, well, that's an obscure sort of weird thing. No, what I want you to understand is that he's here at the end of this chapter saying, and you are set apart men to me. But in the chapter it says, about do not allow a practitioner of witchcraft in verse 8. Anyone lying with a beast shall be put to death, verse 9. The other was verse 18. Verse 19, he who slaughters to a mighty one except Yahweh, verse 20. In other words, these are all things, he says, that if you do them, you're not set apart. Don't do these things. When you don't do these things, you set yourself apart. So there's lots of stuff here in chapters, actually in Exodus, chapters 21, like 20, 21, and 22, and that, you see a lot of this. All through Leviticus, like 17, 18, 19, and 20, you see tons of this, where he tells you, do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that, for I am Yahweh, which means I am set apart, which means you need to do these things so you can be like me. Or you need to not do these things that I told you not to do so you can be like me. But you can just read that verse, 31, it says, you are set apart men to me, and you do not eat this. Well, that's all it is? Don't eat the meat torn by dogs? Or, do not eat the meat torn in the field and just throw it to the dogs? No, he's talking about do not delay in giving your harvest and your vintage in verse 29. Do not revile Elohim in verse 28. Do not, if you lend for silver to any of my people in verse 25, you are not to be like the ones who lend on interest. If you take your neighbor's garment, these are all Torah instructions of behavior that makes you set apart men to me. So what we do in our behavior is what sets us apart. Now, of course, we do in our behavior based on having set apart or different thoughts and understandings. I think it's pretty much distinguishable that when you talk to your friends, it's easy to distinguish that you think and see things and understand things differently in a very easily discernible way. They may not understand why you do, but it's pretty obvious you do different things and you understand things differently. Now, of course, that doesn't happen if you don't ever speak up. And what I mean by speak up, not to get in their face when they're doing, but when they try to get you to do and you say, I don't do that. That's how you speak up. I don't do that because it's against Scripture. I don't do that because it's part of my covenant. I can't do that. All right? So that way, people will eventually treat you with the right understanding that you don't do things. They'll stop asking you. Because some of you are really frustrated with family members driving you crazy, bothering you all the time, asking you. Over time, if you're straight and strong and don't argue with them, they will stop. Because they will recognize that it's futile. It's futile. It's not getting anything. But if you give them things to argue with over and over again, or try to convince them that you're right, you're not going to get there. Just tell them, look, I don't agree with you, I don't want to argue with you, but it's not happening. I'm not coming, I'm not doing, I'm not eating, whatever it is that you need to say no to. And just say it with a smile and a soft voice. Say, look, I understand that's the way you feel. It's not the way I see it. It's not the way I'm walking out my walk in fear and trembling. I'm not coming. Or I'm not going to eat that, or I'm not going to participate in that, or I'm not, whatever it is. And over time, they will get it. Even my secular Jewish parents, who would forget on a very regular basis not to, when I came to visit, plan things and schedule things to do on Saturday, figured it out pretty quickly. When I continuously said, I can't do that, I'm not doing this, I'm not going to that. And of course, they poked and prodded, maybe not as aggressively as some of you. I have Christian parents, I have Christian family members, especially if they're pastors and stuff. But they did poke and prod. And all you need to do is be like flint, set your face, and be gentle but firm. In other words, you don't have to yell at them or anything, but just say, no, I'm sorry. I understand that's how you feel, but I can't do that. Right? You can do what you want. It's your life. This is mine. This is my choice. And in the future, if you ask, the answer will not change. Okay? So hopefully we can make sense out of that. Okay? Let's see. Let's go to chapter 20 of Leviticus. We'll get sort of the same idea here. The same idea, because I said chapters 17 through 20 cover a lot of that. I usually call Leviticus 17 through 20 expanding on the Torah, because every Torah command except one is mentioned there, and the one that's not mentioned is covenanting. And actually everything that's wrong in the behaviors is because they covet. So really it is mentioned, just not directly. So chapter 20, Leviticus, and verse 7. And you shall set yourselves apart and shall be set apart, for I am Yahweh your Elohim. And you shall guard my laws and do them, for I am Yahweh who sets you apart. So now he's telling you that it's the laws that set you apart. You're going to set yourself apart and guard my laws, because nobody else does that. Only my set apart people guards my laws. Oh, but what if other people do it? Then they become part of his set apart people, which he wants everybody to do. That's the beautiful thing. So here in this chapter, okay, for context, you can look at verse 2, where in verse 2 it says, say to the children of Israel. Okay, so this is to the children of Israel, and then it goes into things like, offering your offspring to Molech and other things. So again, I can go and jump around through chapter 20, and actually, this always, if you go back into 18, 19, and 20, there's nothing but do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. It's happening all through, a lot of do nots in these chapters, all right? There are more negative commands than positive commands. Negative command isn't because it's negative. It means like a do not. There are more don'ts than do's, okay? 365 don'ts, 248 do's. Okay, so there's more than 100 more don'ts than do's. That's if you go by the 613, right? Okay. Now, but you knew that, right? How many don'ts, how many do's, all that kind of stuff? If you listen to the 19 parts of, I should quiz you on how many parts teachings have. It's amazing I remember this, that there's 19 parts in that teaching. All right, I think I remember because when we used to set the CDs out on the table, I remembered having to line up 19 of them, which was really rough when I got to the heart of the matter and I lined up 65 of those. All right, now 64, right? 64 parts? 65 parts. 4, right? 4. All right, 64 parts, see? The mind is starting to go. Okay. Chapter 22, stay in Leviticus, and verse 32. And do not profane my set apart name. Okay, don't profane my reputation. And I shall be set apart among the children of Israel. I am Yahweh who set you apart. So what does it mean to do not profane my name? When you do these things that I told you not to do, you're profaning me, because people will now think that I approve of all of that because you claim to be mine. And so what are you doing? Go back to the no other name teaching, right? What we do affects how he is seen by other people. That's what it means to profane his name. That's breaking the third commandment. It's not how you say his name. It's claiming to be his and then acting the fool, acting like the world. Because then the world doesn't have that set apart understanding. Oh, you say you're his while you're eating a pork chop and working on Saturday, and what does that mean that you're his? See, when we say we're his and we do Saturday, not Sunday, and we do the feasts and not Christmas and Easter and Halloween and all that stuff, and we eat different, now we look discernibly different. And we're obeying. Let's see. Go to chapter 10. We're going to get this done, I think. I'll just finish this section today. No, we're not going to get it done. Okay, Leviticus 10. I just looked at one of the references. It's 21 verses. We're not getting that done. Okay, Leviticus 10. And it's in Romans, so that's definitely not going to go quick. Okay, Leviticus 10 and in verse 1. Okay, this will probably be the last one then, but I'm going to cover. Nadab and Avihu, the sons of Aaron, each took his fire holder and put fire in it and put incense on it and brought strange, and the word strange there means unauthorized. Okay, unauthorized fire before Yahweh, which he had not commanded. See, unauthorized. That's why it was strange. It was like, that's strange that you brought that. I never authorized it. And the fire then came out from Yahweh and consumed them, and they died before Yahweh. And Moshe then says to Aaron, this is what Yahweh spoke, saying, by those who come near to me, let me be set apart. And before all the people, let me be esteemed. And Aaron was silent. Okay, so these two, this is why I don't like this chapter break. It should not be a break here. At the end of chapter 9, we see Moses and Aaron go into the tent of meeting, verse 23, and come out and bless the people, and the esteem of Yahweh appeared to all the people. Fire came out from before Yahweh, just like it did to these guys, but it consumed the burnt offering and the fat on the altar. And all the people saw and cried aloud and fell on their faces. They were impressed. So Nadab and Abihu go, Hey, look at our father and our uncle just did. It looks pretty cool. Let's go do that same thing, because they wanted the accolades. Okay, this was to be seen by men. He says, you do not do things to be seen by men. He says, you are set apart, you are to set me apart. So anybody's going to come near to me. This is talking about the priesthood. Coming near to me, guess what we are told in Hebrews? We can now draw near through our high priest, to the Melchizedekian. James tells us, draw near to him and he'll draw near to you. He says, but don't draw near to me and not be set apart. He says, this is what Yahweh said, by those who come near me, let me be set apart. Don't embarrass me among the people. He says, and before all the people, let me be esteemed. Look, I say a lot of things up here. I know I make a lot of people laugh, embarrass a few people, everything else. But all of this is because I'm trying to get him esteem. All of this is to bring all the glory and honor to him. And that glory and honor goes to him when you obey. Not obey me, when you obey him, okay? When your behavior is set apart, and I had a part in inspiring you to do it, that brings him glory and honor, okay? And that's what I'm looking to do. So you have to understand that that's another example of that. And by the way, this was so serious that he wasn't going to even let Aaron and Moshe mourn for these two, because what they did was so egregious. Because you see this here in verse 6, and Moses said to Aaron and to Eleazar and Ithamar, his sons, do not unbind your heads nor tear your garments lest you die, and the wrath come upon all the people, but let your brothers, all the house of Israel, bewail the burning which Yahweh has kindled. In other words, and I said this to somebody earlier today, let's not be praying necessarily against natural consequences. You have family members that are doing dumb things. I'm not even just talking about breaking Torah. I mean, there are people doing dangerously dumb things, drugs and this and that, or whatever they're doing. Well, listen, pray for them to be out of that stuff. But if they're doing it has caused a problem, I'm not talking about just being in it, but let's say they're now suffering. Okay, they drank all night, now they have a terrible hangover. I'm not praying for that hangover. I'm glad they got the hangover. They need to recognize that their behavior had a consequence. They're spending their money like stupidity, and now they're broke and they're in debt and they're almost to be homeless. Well, that's a natural consequence. They brought it on themselves. And so, and if people don't like it when they come to me and I tell them, look, sometimes you got to pay the stupid tax. Okay? In other words, there's a cost to being dumb, foolish, not getting counsel, whatever you need to do. But we have to be resistant of this urge to be like mothers who want to keep their children from all consequences, which only hurts them, by the way. If it's not going to do permanent damage to them, let them suffer. But let them suffer a consequence that all you need to do is connect the two. This is what you did, that's why you're suffering. Okay? Connect those dots, and that's all that you need to do. Oh, but I never. No, I want you to be upset and cry and miserable, because now next time you'll think differently before you do this dumb thing. But no, it hurts you to watch them cry, and I feel so bad. No, you don't. If you really felt bad for them, you would resist the urge to make it worse. You're destroying the opportunity for them to learn. You can listen or not listen. I'm just telling you the truth. You are destroying their learning opportunity. And then you wonder why they're all spoiled and useless when they get to be 18, 20 years old, and they can't move out of the house, they can't afford anything, they can't do anything, because you've allowed them and coddled them and enabled them and codependented them in all their dumb things. And I'm not saying it's your job to stop them from doing them. Sure, talk to them when they do something dumb. After the headache and the hangover, or they come out of their drug stupor is over, sit down with them and say, would you like to talk about what happened? Would you like to hear some counsel? No. All right, good. Go enjoy it some more. And then see how much you suffer. Eventually you'll kill yourself. And then you'll cry, but you know what? Moses and Aaron were told not to cry. Don't mourn, don't unbind your head. They earned what they got. That's hard. I mean, I cannot imagine, having my two boys do something that stupid and just get killed for it, and I can't mourn over it that way. He said, don't unbind your head. He says, Move on, okay? They embarrassed me. They knew they were not authorized to do this. We had given the instructions already. And so, you know what? I think maybe we'll use that as a lesson here, and we'll just close with this. How many things are you doing that you're not authorized to do? Are you authorized to change the calendar? Oh, I'm not changing it. I'm trying to fix it. Really? Who authorized you to do that? Who authorized you to fix the calendar? Who authorized you to override what the Sanhedrin said? Who authorized you to change his name or what you think his name? Who authorized you to do all kinds of things? Who authorized you? Okay? Because I got people that claim they're authorized. They send me emails and things saying, Yahweh sent me to the teachers and to the ministries. Okay, fine, you think that's what he sent you. But not most of you. Most of you know that's not true. But you do all these things that, well, I just want the truth. Fine, look for it. But nobody authorized you to become the author of it. And that's what really happens why we have so much confusion in the body, because everybody's making up their own truth. I'm not saying they're creating it and making it up, but I mean they see something, they seem like, I like that, that sounds right, and that's their truth. And then they go ahead and become the evangelist for that truth. They go out there and promote it to everybody, okay? But I would ask the question, are you, trespassing in an area you don't belong in? Are you authorized? Because when we get to the sin teaching, trespass is a huge part of that. And some of you are trespassing in unauthorized territory. You may want to be in the ministry, but if you're not, you're not. Maybe someday you will be, but you are where you are, and you're only authorized to do what you're authorized to do at that point. By the way, I'm very careful with this too. Some of you will come to me in counsel and want me to get involved in your family life in ways that I'm not authorized to do. And I say, well, what do you want me to do? I can't do anything. It's not my family, it's your family. It's not my husband, it's your husband. It's not my wife, it's your wife. Whatever it is, I'm not authorized to do that. And so, recognize that there are limits to the scope of what you've been given to do. We've talked about this all the time. If you're a licensed person, one of the things you had to learn was the limit to the scope of your license. You're licensed only for a limited scope of activities. And so you're warned not to do that. Okay? I remember this as a real estate agent. I was told, don't accidentally act like you're an attorney. Don't give legal advice. You're not licensed for that. Don't act like you're an accountant. You're not certified public accountant. You're not licensed for that. You best do is advise them to go find one. You need to talk to an accountant. You need to talk to an attorney. And by the way, when you call me, I'll do that all the time. I'll send you to the people that are professionals that are outside the scope of what I'm supposed to be doing. I'll say, for this, you need to go to someone who's certified and licensed to do it. Well, but I want you to do it. I'm not stepping outside my scope. Okay? That frustrates some people too. And they get mad at me. I was like, nope. All right? Because I'll say this often enough when we're counseling. Well, what do you want me to do? And they look at me like I'm your rabbi. What do you think that means? What do you want me to do? I mean, no, they don't know. She said, give us answers. No, not just that. No, they want me to actually go in and make their husband do, or their child do, or their wife do, or whatever. I've actually had people saying, could you call my husband? No. I was going to say another word in front of no. Blank, no. He's never going to receive that well. If your husband wants to call me, I'll talk to him. I'm not calling anybody's spouse unless they want me to. And actually I had one person once, I don't remember when this was, a while back, who actually told me their spouse was wanting to call. I called, that spouse had no idea I was calling. It didn't go badly, praise Yah. I mean, but it didn't bear any fruit either. But he took it well, or she, I don't know. I was calling the husband, I think, and he took it well, but he was like, I don't know why you're calling me. So, and the way he said it, it was pretty clear. He really didn't have any idea that I was going to call him. He wasn't mad about it though, which is that's the only part that went well. Anyway, so I hope that was a blessing. Let's go ahead and pray. Father, we're going to pray. Father, we want to come before you. Father, we just learned a whole lot about our behavior, about setting you apart, about setting ourselves apart. And so, Father, we are going to ask that you help us to receive the teaching, right? The teaching you just revealed to us was revealed to us, and now we have to receive it. And then once we receive it, we need to act upon it. So give us the strength, the courage, and the motivation to be inspired, to receive and act upon what we heard in terms of setting ourselves apart. So, Father, we thank you, we praise you, and give you all glory and honor. In the name above all names, Yeshua our Messiah. Amen. Amen. Amen.